All right, thank you so much for joining the Rosa Mystica. Today, the Australia version, and that's the last existing continent that we travel to. It's way down south. Also, just like Antarctica, but this is just a little bit different. And so after this, there's one more continent, and that's the continent of your imagination. That's your continent, and who knows what that is. It doesn't necessarily need to be on planet Earth. So we will dive into that in 2 weeks. Next week there will be like a pause, and the 13th we come together again with the Rosa Mystica for the last edition of it. And so today Rosa Mystica Australia, continent Australia, brings us to the natives. That was what came up for me to take a look at and to share with you. And that has been like an absolutely lovely discovery. Just because, this is the natives of Australia, the Aborigines are like they have been around for a long time. Now, humanhood hasn't been like it is now. It hasn't been like that forever. No, that was a whole, like a beautiful, harmonious group called the Aborigines, who have literally lived in deserts, who have, well, it wasn't a desert to them. So it is the place where you find yourself, and depending on how you look at yourself, you cannot be in the desert. If you see yourself as a total connected, universal mind or universal being, supported by this same universe, it really doesn't matter where you find yourself, but that is still true. Now, the Aborigines have basically shared that with one another. Didn't develop anything strange in that sense, like ideas of separation or anything like that. So we are going to use parts of that in our meeting today. One of them is the Didiri meditation. It is, you can watch it on YouTube. We're actually using a tape on YouTube to do that. It's so beautiful that I had this is in alignment. That's really lovely. So that's something that comes up in a moment. Now, one thing I want to share about the spiritual healing related to the idea of Aborigine is in fact not any different than how they saw themselves or see themselves present. And that has to do with the idea of, for instance, healing. What if you break an arm? You go on Ayers Rock, like one of the big mountains there, you glitch and you fall, and it appears that you have a broken arm. Now what do? So what they did and still do in the practice of the spiritual healing that they perform is really in fact returning back to the present moment and taking time to let it become whole, and however that looks. But that's in fact the same as the secret that has come to us. So that's why I love to make the connection with the Aborigines in that sense with spiritual healing, because spiritual healing, as it is taught in the Course in Miracles or by Joel, is in fact recognizing the perfection in yourself. In your recognition of the perfection of yourself, everything is whole. How could there be an exception to that? Wholeness is whole. Truth is true. Healed is healed. Perfect is perfect. Now this This is then, in fact, very much comparable to the Aboriginal spiritual healing. In fact, everything was brought back on a daily basis to its perfection by not doing anything else, by not allowing anything else to enter your mind as a distraction. But basically being in touch, being in communication with spirit, with spirits, with the totality of the universe. That is so lovely. So knowing this, we started the Diri meditation, and so I use a video for that. We will watch the video, but you can close your eyes. You don't necessarily need the visuals. I decided to show them, but it's more like it's not necessary in order to come in touch with yourself, basically. And like you suddenly find yourself being a total part of the whole occurrence. And that's what I love about it. You don't need visuals for that in order to feel that, is what I'm. So after this meditation, we will be quiet for a moment.
To know me is to breathe with me. To breathe with me is to listen deeply. To listen deeply is to connect. It's a sound. The sound of deep calling to deep. Dadidi, the deep inner spring inside us. We call on it, and it calls on us. We are river people. We cannot hurry the river. We need to move with the current and understand its ways. We wait for the rain to fill our rivers and water our thirsty earth. We watch our bush foods and wait for them to open before we gather them. We wait for our young people as they grow. The time for rebirth is now. If our culture is alive and strong and respected, it will grow. It will not die, and our spirit will not die. I believe that the spirit of Dadidi that we have to offer will blossom and grow. Not just within ourselves, but in our whole nation.
All right, thank you. Thank you for taking part in the Dadiri, the inner source meditation. I thought it was very lovely. And so a wonderful start of our moment together. So continuing then with some discoveries of the poetry and the spiritual poetry of that, what is given through the tradition, you could say, of the Aborigines. I'm using specifically this because like that's where it starts. It was the same with, in fact, when I went up to North America. Like when we looked there, we were suddenly with the Inuits, and one way or another, it's like the natives are there. It's where you connect with. I love that idea. To see what happened on that continent, or what is happening on that continent. And so that's why I use the Aborigines today. So I'm using some expressions that I've found regarding the culture, the poetry, just to get a start. And then I come up with an example, two examples of poetry, one also very, very lovely, and the other too. So there's a lot of choice in that sense, because it has the quality of silence, taking time, depth, inspiration. And it's like it's with music, it is with dance, it is with words, it is painting. It's very expressive altogether. Aboriginal spiritual poetry is a profound and ancient form of expression that lies at the very heart of indigenous Australian cultures. It is not merely about religious belief in a Western sense, but a holistic worldview that encompasses everything: the land, ancestors, creation stories, social law, identity, and interconnectedness of all living and non-living things. And specifically, the last part is, of course, beautiful to see that in poetry and all this. Ancestral beings and totems, that wasn't part of it too. Spiritual poetry frequently refers to specific ancestral beings, that is, rainbow serpent, kangaroo, emu, who are responsible for shaping the world and imparting laws. Many Aboriginal people have a totem, an animal, plant, or natural feature with which they have a special spiritual relationship. And this connection often features in their poetic expression. And we're going to see some examples of that also in music. Interconnectedness and holism. Aboriginal spirituality emphasizes that everything in the universe is interconnected: humans, animals, plants, landforms, celestial bodies. And spiritual poetry reflects this deep sense of unity and balance. Now here we have a famous poem, and I'm going to let someone share that.
Poem by Hillis Maris, Spiritual Song of the Aborigine. I'm a child of the Dreamtime people, part of this land, like the gnarled gum tree. I'm the river softly singing, chanting our songs on my way to the sea. My spirit is the dust devils, mirage that dance on the plain. I am the snow, the wind, and the falling rain. I am part of the rocks and the red desert earth, red as the blood that flows in my veins. I am eagle, crow, and snake that glides through the rainforest that clings to the mountains. I awakened here when the earth was new. There was emu, wombat, and kangaroo. No other man of a different hue. I am this land, and this land is me. I am Australia.
All right. Thank you so much. So here, to stay in Swiss, the Swiss psychologist Carl Jung was obsessed with Australian Aborigine. Jung also estimated that the Aboriginal spent 3 to 4 hours a day meeting their survival needs. But where Jung felt that the Australian Aborigines were unique among the world's indigenous peoples was how they utilized the overwhelming majority of their time. According to Jung, they spent that time almost exclusively cultivating a higher state of consciousness. Or in Jungian terms, they spent the vast majority of their time contacting and immersing themselves in the collective unconscious. Now, it is not unusual for the Earth's indigenous people to endeavor to raise their consciousness or to make contact to so-called spiritual realms. All right. So, to continue, I would love to show you two things. One of them is a beautiful poem, or the words of Aborigines, the words, how they use the words. And this is it's a very modern poem. So I'm going to show that to you.
I'm standing by this fire, the embers smoking, the ashes glowing, the coals weighing us down. The youth are buried in the rubble. My eyes are burning, and through my nostrils the smoke is stirring. I breathe it in. Yuya Garabura. I wear a ship on my wrist that shows my blood comes from convicts. On the second fleet, my father's forefathers came, whipped, beaten, and bound in chains. The dark tone in my skin, the brown in my eyes, sunset to sunrise, my Wunnal mother's side, my Gika, who grew up in a dugout canoe. In her womb is where my consciousness grew. Yuya Garabura. I walk between these two worlds, a split life, split skin, split tongue, split kin. Every day these worlds collide, and I'm living and breathing this story of black and white. Sitting in the middle of this collision, my mission is to bring two divided worlds to sit beside this fire and listen. Through this skin, I know where I belong. It is both my center and my division. Yuya Garabura. My ancestors dance in the stars, and their tongues are in the flames. And they tell me, you have to keep the fire alive between the black and the white. There's a story waiting to be spoken. In every life, there's a spirit waiting to be woken. Now I'm looking at you with the stars in my eyes, and my tongue is burning flames. And I say, Yuya Garabura. The sacred songs are still being sung, but the words are slowly fading. The distant cries I'm hearing are the mothers burying their babies. The elders are standing strong, but the ground beneath them is breaking. Yuya Garabura. Now I welcome you to sit beside my fire. I'm allowing you to digest my confusion. I will not point my finger and blame, because when we start blaming each other, we make no room for changing each other. We've got to keep this fire burning, with ash on our feet and coal in our hands. Teach Barorojiba, them young ones, how to live side by side. Because tomorrow, when the sun rises and our fires have gone quiet, they will be the ones to reignite it. Yuya Garabura. These flames, us, will be their guidance.
Song lines. We were talking about song lines, and song lines we also see back in our, say, non-public part, and that's the part that's going to start in a moment. And the song lines are basically also paintings. Like, they can be very well paintings, but when you look at the paintings you don't really understand what it is, because you see lines and you see dots and all this. And when you take a really good look at it, and you see that it actually is like an aerial view looking downward, exactly where you are or where you're going. So the paintings that they made were also, and are still making, because it's still continuing, are like aerial views, in fact, where you walk through certain areas and recognize the landscape with landmarks, with specific points, to figure out, in fact, to show you where you are. Now this is really something else. So I love that, and I loved it in the poetry too. So I used it in poetry just as an example. I might as well just start it already. So I call this song lines. So we start up in the top here. On my way, passing through the fields of gladioli, this beautiful land, wind in my hair, sun in my face, simply connected. The river I cross, ships I transcend. The sunlight reflects. Deep in my eyes, I inhale the freshness given me today. Coming to town, wind from the west, whatever comes my way. The song is sung, the light is my guide. Entering the forest, trees are all around. The tree is the trust, nowhere to go, rooted in silence. Gliding planes arrive and go, the wind is guiding. Thermals rise them up, great heights, great view. Sand and dust, needles and leaves, the comfy smell. Warm and embracing, this is my land. On my way home, the song today is almost sung. Nothing but gratitude, beauty and comfort echoes in my heart. Welcome home.